industry, it can get quite quickly if we don't try to regulate and have a real understanding of how we're going to address some of these challenges. So I think our marching orders are set very clearly by the discussion today. My other point, I wanted to mention, David's got the copy of this report that Mike Posner worked on at NYU with the World Economic Forum. If we're going to give shout-outs, is there somebody here who worked on it back there? Yes? Thank you for this. I think it's a good description of some of the issues in this space. I read it recently myself, so I do think there's a lot of great work being done on how to break these things down. And then finally, I'll just close by of course, thanking our wonderful panelists and also acknowledging the wonderful team, Tim and Azin, who've helped us pull the panel together today, and all my other colleagues that are in the room who have been working on these issues and trying to bring us together to talk about this as we go forward. So thank you all very much.
That wasn't a very good picture. Let's do it again here with the three of us, because it was so cool with your words, you know. I hope they don't go away.
Nee, maar... Ja, dat klopt. Er staat op online. Een stukje.
Wait, that background is just kind of, it's kind of creepy. I mean, that's...
How did they spell Saki?
They didn't say it. It didn't come in. There was
It was before you hit the...
I think it's
someone said,
because,
oh, I got it. Yeah.
I was going to actually ask. Okay, so it's an apple.
This is the best device I've ever had.
Okay, because this is my whole thing. Now, I am moving over to only doing stuff on a computer, you know, like taking notes the way that you're doing it. You see, I like to type. I much prefer to type notes, but I'm in too many meetings where I feel like I can't do that.
Yeah, look at this.
But I can write like this, okay? But then does this convert over from you? Yeah.
Thanks.
But you can go back and look at it. You can save those pages, but you can't search it.
So honestly, the reason I take notes is for processing. I very rarely go back to my notes, unless it was kind of a policy. You know, if I'm doing something like this, it's really so that I can think.
See, I actually go back a lot to remind myself of what the action points and what are the takeaways.
Can you read your handwriting?
Only about half the time. But that's why I should tell you. But
Nice to meet you.
This is the greatest device.
I need the
You
word.
have to find the right device for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the iPad Pro, and I've got the pen. I'll show you later.
I was going to get like a Microsoft Surface, but that's not as good.
Oh, I don't know if they're giving it to you.
No, they're not. Hey!
You're coming from you.
Someone has said that. Someone has said that.
Yeah.
If a complainant says it's on search engines, you know, which again I find very someone can go down to terms of service to complain about that. I'm not sure they can on search engines. They certainly can. And that's totally okay. It's not comparative. But if they go down wanting a way of endemic record or site, say, it's on the region like down. I would never encourage them to do that because they will find that they made essentially their press and their town and hope that it will be published along with the URL.
I already know that
I think there is a joke about their claims as a permanent stage of the text controlling privacy invasions will work.
Yeah.
Yes, he's my, he's leading the board of
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Thinking it will be vegan, so they're always happy.
Yes, so that's pretty good. So you're the one like doing
Yeah, right now I to keep it in the child movement business, I call myself the seeker. So I'm the one that's always seeking online content. Right now we don't use a lot of programs, so everything I find I just search for it by hand, just me at the moment, but the rest of the team is coming after the Christmas holidays. So that's nice. So we're still waiting for that.
I actually love the way you work in the sense that at least it's one of the very few things that you can ever
Yeah, it's
that's really
we actually left clips from ISIS online because there was nothing to. Yeah, they're walking around and they're burning cigarettes and they're showing supermarkets. Yeah, so we even had to.
They would not let me
find out if it was.
I'm glad. I'm glad you made it. Like, it was so funny because I actually don't have access to play most of the time. Yeah. No, I just like got it afterwards.
looking at pictures.
No, well, afterwards, and then suddenly you asked the question, I was like, oh, so he's here. So I was like, that's the most important thing.
It's like a Switzerland thing. It's like a Swiss thing.
Yeah, there need to be two sounds. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you this. 2 weeks ago, I was at an event in the European Parliament, so next we're meeting on counter-narratives, and the issue of content renewables obviously came up. So there was a guy from I don't know his name. No. Last name. I look it up and let you know. The thing is that Sophie was presenting the work of the EU European Parliament, and so they referred to Europe as the legal first, but it's like we, well, we said no member states are doing this, and but then it's very slow and whatever, and so we prefer to what we was interesting. I thought was like said that they invited €1,000, and but they only have a success rate of 84%. So he was complaining like, well, I don't have a voice powers. Like, yeah, but you're doing it voluntarily on the basis of true. Like,
And that's the interesting thing. Why is the percentage so low? Is it because the quality of the snagging, or is it because the specific company wasn't good? But we also experience that some companies, you can refer everything you want, and they're having videos using direct calls to join the jihad. They just don't use it. They have a kind of philosophy not to touch anything that's upon the floor. So there are diverse reasons why things are still online. And there are also, this I think, the most important thing is that they change it. There are different legal bases and frameworks and criteria used by different
yeah, I get it. And obviously, the other question is that was the historical implications.
And the same thing happened.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Sorry to be so forward about moving everyone on, but I hope you can stay for this session too. I hope this session invites as much debate. No, that's great. It's obviously a very vibrant discussion that people stay engaged, of course.
That part is good. What's the next panel?
So this is on encryption policy and identifying human rights respect and encryption policy, which is a focus of our work. Yeah, so please do stick around.
I gotta head outside for a second. But
Okay.
I might.
But yeah, pop back in. Okay, great. Thank you. We'll start in 2-3 minutes.
But you don't use encryption.
No, stay, please stay.
To be honest, they never
Ben, did you want to come up?
email from us. We leak information. But
Don't hide. You have to be involved. This is a fully interactive session.
colleagues that give them to the press, but we never had people hacking into our system.
Right. Okay, but anyway, if you're gonna, anyway, if you release to the press, you want the press to know that this is happening so they create awareness. So what's the purpose of sending it to the press?
I don't know. I would never. That's the mindset of some colleagues. It's heavily punished because
Up to me, yeah.
yeah, it's not your decision to give some information.
Hi, everyone. So we're going to start this session on identifying human rights respecting encryption policy between a rock and a hard place. Just to introduce myself, my name is Sheetal Kumar, and I am the program lead. I'm being, oh my goodness. That had an effect. Okay, well that was the intention. Thank you very much for coming to this session. I know it's the end of the day and everyone must be exhausted. And it's been a busy day for everyone, I'm sure. As I was saying, my name is Sheetal Kumar, and I am a program lead at Global Partners Digital, which is an organization based in London but working globally to build a digital environment built on human rights and democratic values. I'm also joined by my colleague from GPD, Richard, who's on the left there, and he'll be helping to facilitate this session as well. And I'm joined by Nicola Seidler from the Internet Society as well, and Benga Sezan from Paradigm Initiative. But before we start and before we go straight into the agenda, I just wanted to give a bit of context as to where this session has come from. And it's actually a follow-up. Last year at the Global IGF in Mexico, I chaired a debate on cybersecurity, who has got our back. And it focused on encryption. Why? Because earlier that year, as I'm sure everyone here knows, a case had brought a rather technical issue of encryption into the world's headlines when the FBI requested that Apple build some kind of exceptional access into a locked iPhone as part of a criminal investigation. And so this idea of building some kind of vulnerability or backdoor into a device resurfaced. And there had been a similar standoff in the 1990s. It wasn't new. But there were particulars to that case that made it rather interesting and difficult. And so on that panel, we debated that particular case, and what we heard in response to that call from across the spectrum, from cryptographers to human rights defenders to policymakers, was recognition, and no, not consensus, but recognition, that backdoors are just not a very good idea. They're not good for cybersecurity, they're not good for human rights, they're just not a very good response to these issues. And that's not to say that we've moved on completely from that call for backdoors. But something that did come out of that session last year from the participants as well was that we need human rights respecting policy responses to these issues. We heard it over and over again. We need human rights respecting responses to these challenges, to the challenges that strong encryption poses to legitimate law enforcement investigations, but also to the challenges that the technical responses sometimes proposed by those law enforcement agencies, like backdoors, can pose to human rights. Hence the title of this session, Between a Rock and a Hard Place, ? So encryption-related policy should be human rights respecting. But what does that actually mean? And what I mean when I say what does that actually mean, I mean if you were to write it down, what would it look like? So this is something that many of us have been grappling with, and there are a number of civil society initiatives and others that have sought to bring clarity to these questions. And that's exactly what we're going to do as well in this session, is tackle that question of what does human rights respecting encryption policy actually look like. So we're going to do that through a format which is interactive. So if you're tired, then beware, you're going to have to get up and walk around a little bit, or at least turn around and talk to the people next to you. Warning, okay? It's divided into two parts. So first we have our two panelists here who will help us frame the discussion. Two panelists couldn't make it, unfortunately. They were both women, by the way. I took that into consideration. So this is not a manel because I'm moderating it. Unfortunately, one of them couldn't make it to the IGF and the other one had to leave early. But that just means we have more time for the breakout, so hopefully that will work out. During that breakout, just to give an overview of what that will look like, we have, as part of our advocacy on this issue at GPD, developed a set of criteria or key messages which we believe should underpin encryption-related policy, and those build on human rights standards, international human rights standards, and we'll use that as a basis for our discussion. We have real-life excerpts of laws and policies that relate to encryption. which we will be mapping against those criteria in breakout groups, and then we will come back in plenary to share our views on how those real-life excerpts actually relate to the criteria that are set out. I have materials for that, so don't worry, we'll get to that. But as I said, we'll first start with a framing of the issue. So I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and then you have 4 minutes to discuss the issue of human rights and encryption. And I know, Nikolai, you will say a few words about why strong encryption is so important, but also what the dilemmas are in this space and where this debate is going now, more than a year after the FBI Apple case. Thank you.
Thanks, and good afternoon. It's never easy to be the last session before cocktails, so I hope we'll be up to the challenge. Yeah, so my name is Nicolas Seller. I work at the Internet Society. The Internet Society has advocated for 25 years, actually, for an open and secure Internet. And when it comes to a secure Internet, obviously encryption has a lot to do with it. And on the topic of encryption, we actually have a very simple and clear position. We do believe that strong encryption should be the norm for all internet traffic and data. And why is that? And that's because secure encryptions are really the bedrock of trusted exchanges online on a daily basis in many domains, from daily e-commerce transactions, financial transactions, and actually also to protect some very fundamental rights, such as the ability to communicate online in a confidential way. Now, of course, every technology has 2 edges, and the same technology that can be used by millions and millions of law-abiding citizens can also be used to conceal criminal activity. And that double edge is, of course, what gets law enforcement and intelligence agencies nervous, and that's what creates some of the human rights tensions that Sheetal